What's going on, y'all? Today, I want to talk about Silent Hill 2 Remake. The original came out in 2001, and many years later, here we are getting a remake. And as you could imagine, others and myself were super excited to see that something like a blast from the past being brought to life in this modern era. And I know you saw the thumbnail talking about nostalgia. We'll dip into that a little bit later into the video, but for now, I really just want to talk about my gameplay experience and what I thought about it. And this review is going to be a little bit different because it's like, there's like a mix of old things that I have to judge as well as like new things that I have to judge. But let's get into it. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say this, but when it comes to graphics, I feel like we've hit a wall where like the graphics look good, but it's hard to push past where we currently are. But that's not to say that this game was bad. I think they did a phenomenal job bringing this game from the past to the present. As I was moving throughout the game, I loved the environments I were in. It didn't feel like blocky. There was no clipping or anything like that, or just kind of weirdness to it. It looked good and it stayed looking good the entire way through. And that's really all there is to say about graphics in most games. Now, art style is a different conversation. This game's a little bit different. It kind of copies the Resident Evil aesthetic or look and feel. So it's like art style is not necessarily something you can apply to this type of game. But nonetheless, I think they nailed it, and the game was very easy it was easy on the eyes. And that's kind of all I have to say about graphics. Before we dive into the story, I just want to quickly summarize what the beginning of the game is. And essentially you play as this guy named James, and your wife passed away like 3 years ago, but you get this strange letter in the mail from your wife who already passed away saying, hey, come meet me at our special place, Silent Hill. And James sets out to go to Silent Hill to see if he can reach the special place and see her again, essentially. And like that's the starting point of the game. So for me, the story was just hard to follow. Like I had a hard time grasping what was happening until the end. And even then at that point, I was still like very confused as to what was happening. I had ideas and theories, but you know, if I had to take a test on it, it'd be a GG. So I had to go watch like a YouTube video to kind of understand what truly happened in the story. And even then it was still kind of shaky to me. I think what else made it confusing was that there were other stories happening while James' story was happening. And this is probably a skill issue on my part, but I watched number 2 when I was younger. And my understanding was that like Pyramid Head was like connected to James. And for those of you who don't know, Pyramid Head is like a nemesis in this game. He's like an enemy that's powerful, that chases you, that you can't exactly take down. Think of it like that. And so once I understood that Pyramid Head was a part of James, I thought everything was in his head. So when I would see other characters in the game, like Angela, Eddie, and Laura, I'm like, how are they connected to James and so forth, and like Maria, and it's like it threw everything upside down, and I just had no idea what was going on. I kind of felt like this was like Kingdom Hearts levels of confusion. But I will say that when the story was being told and I was trying to grasp and comprehend it, it was really engaging to watch. Like I did enjoy it. The words chosen, the voice acting, the subtle music, you know, what they were doing in the cutscene, all that stuff was really pulling, and it was good. I'm just like, every time the cutscene is over, I'm just like, what is happening? So It was interesting. I have mixed feelings. If I could have understood it better, I probably would understand why people say so many good things about the game. But I was struggling to comprehend. So here is where things kind of started to get a little sour for me. I feel like my 2 biggest issues with the game was the gameplay itself and then the pacing of the game. And I feel like if you want to get 2 things right in a video game, those are the 2 things that you want to get right. But let me explain. While playing the game, it felt like I was doing a ton of nothing for like massive amounts of time, with the story like drip feeding me just enough water to keep me hanging on. But remember what I said about the gameplay being confusing, which by itself is not bad. There are a lot of great games out there that give you pieces of the story, and then the player is filling in the gaps, making theories, ideas on what's going to happen, and it's really engaging for the player to see how close they are to hitting the nail on the head when it comes to the story, or just saying if they were right or wrong in general. That's really great gameplay when you can create a story good enough to where they're trying to predict what's going to happen and makes them want to play the game. That's fantastic game development. The problem with Silent Hill 2 is that they give you story slowly over the course of like 20-ish hours, but like what they give you doesn't help you paint a more clear picture. And when you're not being given information to paint a clear picture, all you're doing is hitting the same 2 to 4 enemies over the top of the head, and then they do introduce like maybe like 2 to 3 more as you progress into the late stages of the game, but that's like 7 enemies, and 3 of which you don't see until like 15 plus hours in the game. So you have repetitive combat, which is simply bonking them over the head with your pipe or your bat, or just kind of blast them if you found the blicky, which you should have. So hopefully you can kind of start to see this picture I'm painting where you have long stretches of repetitive gameplay sprinkled in with some confusing story, because there's side character stories that are happening, but you're not sure how they connect to your story, or if they connect at all. You're not really sure. And then they do have puzzles, and the puzzles are good. I didn't get stuck on them too long, but they were enjoyable, but they were such a minor part of the gameplay. But like, that's really all the game has. There's no upgrading your character, there's no upgrading your existing weapons, there's like no new gameplay mechanics. It's just you bonk everything over the head, or you start blasting, like I said, and like it doesn't evolve much past that. And I get that this is a remake and we're talking about the original game, but there are other games that came out around this time that do so much more. And I'm okay with those things not being in a game, but if those things aren't in the game, you gotta fill it with something. So if you're going to pull back on gameplay, then I feel like the storytelling and like the ambience and the fear factor needs to be phenomenal. And the game had its scary parts where the environment was really spooky and you were kind of on edge about what's going to happen, but that was kind of here and there. And the same thing with the story's here and there. So it's like you're kind of left with nothing. And it's just like, after playing games like RE4 Remake, it kind of makes you wonder, like maybe they should have added some extra stuff in there and kind of revamp parts of the game to make it more engaging. I know the devs said they didn't want to do that, and people are going to be mad at them if they do, and people like myself are going to be unsatisfied if they don't. So like, I get there in a rock and a hard place. I think maybe they should have went more innovative with this game, because it just felt so lacking on so many fronts. I mean, once you kind of understand the story, it's really good, but if I have to go outside your game to understand what's happening, then, and to be brutally honest, I feel like that is not a success. So with all that being said, my opinion on Silent Hill 2 is that if I had to give it a number, and then I'll explain, if I had to give it a number, I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. And this is a combination of the base game and the remake. I think the remake did a good job staying true to the original. They did a great job of making the environments feel spooky. The game felt good to play and handle. I'm not going to judge a PS2 game based on how smooth it is, because that was a long time ago. It's just that in terms of raw gameplay, it doesn't really offer a whole lot other than mash the attack button and then aim and shoot. Like, that's really it in terms of like what you actually do in the game. And then puzzles are kind of okay. You walk up, you push this button, like it's extremely simple. It's extremely simple. And for $70 for this level of gameplay and storytelling, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, if you can catch it on sale, catch it on sale. I see a lot of people praising the game and, they're loving it and whatnot. And it's like, I'm just not seeing what they're seeing. And like, I guess that's all there is to it. Lastly, I just want to talk about nostalgia for a little bit. I just kind of feel like nostalgia might be hurting the gaming industry. Just looking at Silent Hill, for example, people swear up and down that, these games we played back then are like leagues above what we play today. And, after playing Silent Hill 2 and being super excited to play the game, maybe what happened was we were way younger, our frontal lobes weren't developed, and, we didn't really understand what it meant to play a fully developed, fully fledged game. Now, there were some bangers back then. We're talking like Ocarina of Time, which I missed out on. I didn't get to play Ocarina. But, I feel like maybe a lot of us just didn't know what it meant to play a good game, and that maybe nostalgia is hurting us because we're so hard and rigid on these games that come out today. But that's because we're adults and we can kind of see when corners are being cut, when developers are being lazy and whatnot. And I never really thought like this before, but as I was playing Silent Hill 2, I couldn't help but think like, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I kind of just see people, like I said earlier, praising the game and whatnot. And just maybe everyone's expectations are different. I just feel like the bar is higher now than it was back then. So it just has me thinking, are these games back then as good as we thought they were? But with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, consider subbing for me. I'm going to continue to make game reviews and have game think pieces and other gaming related content, clips and whatnot. It would help a ton. Definitely hit the like button for me. And I'd love for you to comment what you think about, Silent Hill. What do you think about nostalgia, how it impacts gaming? And just, do you think there should be more remakes? You know, if there are remakes that should be made, which games? Do you think that they should kind of twist and modify these games to remake like they did with, excuse me, going too fast, like they did with Resident Evil 4 remake? I'd love to hear all of that from you guys. And y'all stay safe out there. Peace.